You're listening to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast on the air since 1981.
And now, here's your host.
And we're back. It's always great to have Gidi Grinstein with us. He's a founder of the Radio Group, president of Radio USA. He's been involved for so many years in public policy and political affairs in Israel. He played an important role designing the Birthright Israel program. He served as secretary of the Israeli delegation in the peace negotiation with the PLO under Prime Minister Barak, participated in 2000 Camp David Summit. He's also written a fascinating book called, let's see, his latest book is called in 2013, published Gidi, The Invisible Hand of Jewish Adaptability, but he also published another book called Insights, Peacemaking in the Oslo Process, 30 Years and Counting, Facing Israel. Gidi, good to have you back. Welcome to the show again.
Zev, thank you for having me, and Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov to you. So tell us, I know that I saw your piece, are you optimistic now that finally things are going to come to a head in Gaza and we're going to see an end of the war and a new situation for Israel?
Well, first of all, I'm more optimistic than I've been in a long time about the overall opportunities in the Middle East. I think it's the most plastic moment since 1917. So much is possible, going from Lebanon to Syria, the Palestinians, normalization with Saudi, expansion of the Abraham Accords, and of course, ending the war in Gaza, and possibly also some sort of a political path towards a political solution with the Palestinians.
Well, I think the president has said that something's going to be brewing in Gaza. I don't know what that means. I saw a Jerusalem Post story, but I haven't seen getting a lot of traction that UAE and Egypt, among the countries supposed to patrol and take care of Gaza, and the Hamas terrorists are supposed to be leaving. But I'm not sure if that's...
Clearly, the President Trump is leaning in. He does have an opportunity to make history more than any other president, American president, in 100 years. The conditions are ripe. Some of it were his creations, other are not, because of the drama that we have seen since October 7. But yes, I think that the contours of what should happen in Gaza have been clear for a long time. And that is that we will need some sort of an agreement on a transition period where Israeli forces will withdraw to some sort of a perimeter where Israel will have security control. We can call it Area A, like in the West Bank. And then in the rest of Gaza, there will be a combination of Palestinian self-governing body and an international force that will initially deal with the reconstruction of Gaza and the security of, obviously, and cleaning Gaza up in terms of bombs that did not explode and all these other challenges. And eventually we will move to negotiations about the permanent status of Gaza. That probably will take about 3 to 4 years. And that's what we're looking at. This has been the framework for a long time. And hopefully right now it's going to happen.
Now, part of what I read in the Jerusalem Post, again, I've only seen it there, is that part of this whole process is that the Prime Minister of Israel will recognize a Palestinian state. I can't see that happening. I can't see his coalition staying intact. I can't see him agreeing to that.
So all that the Prime Minister of Israel needs to do at this point is to acknowledge that there will be a Palestinian state at the end of the process. Obviously, the final borders of that state and its powers and responsibilities will have to be negotiated. So it's kind of a statement about the political horizon of the process. You're talking about the political constraints of the Prime Minister. So here I'd like to offer 3 insights. Number one, the Prime Minister of Israel and the State of Israel owes President Trump a huge amount. And if this is what President Trump wants, that's probably going to happen. Number two, the Prime Minister of Israel could not have been in a lower point than October 7, and he can't be at a higher point than right now. So basically for him, it's all downhill from now. Gaza, the messiness of Gaza, dealing with the situation there, the political turmoil in Israel. And I know of a lot of people within the right wing who are shifting to support Netanyahu, but I don't know of a single person outside, at least in my circles, that that is saying, "Oh, now I'm going to vote for Netanyahu in the next elections." So it's not clear at all that Netanyahu will even win the next election. This is really the zenith of his political career is right now, and I think that right now he has the mandate to do things that he didn't have 3 or 4 or 5 weeks ago. So even from that perspective, I think there is more room for optimism at this moment.
Now, let's put it this way. The lowest point, of course, was the October 7th, where Israeli intelligence failed, and the prime minister is responsible for that because everything stops at his desk. But having said that, the success that Israel had with Iran, including the American bombing, that, like you said, brings them to a zenith, brings to a new place. So does that give him more popularity with the Israeli population?
Well, of course, he's now more popular than he's been in a long time. But I do want to say that his responsibility on October 7 is not just because of the intelligence failure. He is the one that nurtured Hamas for almost 10 years. He is the architect of the Qatari funding to Hamas. He overruled the military over and over again in previous instances where the military warned against the buildup of Hamas military force and offered to operate in Gaza. The prime minister overruled them because he had all these back channel deals with Hamas through Qatar. So yes, on October 7 he wasn't warned, but multiple times before he was. So he has a huge personal responsibility for what happened in October 7. But that is, careers of politicians who have been in power for a long time. It's never black or white, all bad or all good. Especially Prime Minister Netanyahu. He's been in power on and off since 1996. So on the one hand, he is credited for building the Israeli economy and putting it on track for long-term prosperity. At the same time, in recent years, he's been feeding the most non-productive element of of Israeli society, which is the ultra-Orthodox. So, and he's taking all sorts of steps that are compromising the scientific foundation of Israel and many other things. So he has a mixed record, but for sure right now he's more popular than he has been in any other point in the last 2 years.
Well, you said the ultra-Orthodox. What do you mean by that? Because that's an important part of his coalition. He couldn't exist without the ultra-Orthodox.
Of course
parties.
He couldn't exist, but at the same time, when you look at his position as prime minister, he is funding a totally unproductive sector of society who is not gaining the basic skills that are required in order to thrive in the modern economy, skills that are required, in terms of math, science, English, the basic tools in the modern economy. And he's feeding that lifestyle. Beyond that, we have to remember that the prime minister is trying to mass exempt almost 25% of the population from service in the military.
But it's not just any government would have the same problem, and you can't legislate that. You have to make a deal with them. They just can't just be into the army right away.
Of course, but it's happening on his shift. I agree with you that you have to legislate, but it's happening on his shift, and that's until now.
Hold on.
Until now, the issue of whether the ultra-Orthodox would serve in the military was an open issue. He wants to permanently legislate that they will not serve. This is a watershed moment, because if you look, for example, at the service of women, constitute a very important force within the IDF. But today, the only constituency in Israel that women constituency that is mandatory service are secular women. 50% of the population is exempt, and that is totally unacceptable, and it cannot continue.
Well, I've just read about an Israeli El Al pilot, Haredi woman who has been flying the plane. I think we just got some attention in the American Jewish media.
Well, here and there are examples, of course, but generally speaking, he is looking to mass exempt a very large segment of the population in a country that is facing tremendous security burden. And my broader point is this. Prime Minister Netanyahu has been in power for almost 30 years on and off. He has a record that is a mix between successes and failures and many other things. Right now, he's at his zenith, and therefore, he can do a lot of things that he could not have done just a few months ago. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I'm saying if he does these things, his coalition will fall apart.
Well, maybe his coalition needs to fall apart because this is a coalition that cannot win in Gaza. This is a coalition that is leading Israel into a quagmire in Gaza that is a national security disaster, what is going on there. So maybe that coalition should collapse. That coalition has served its term. They had multiple successes in Lebanon, in Iran, and in other places. But now, that's it.
I'm hearing, the real challenges in Judea and Samaria. I heard there's a lot of turmoil, and while the world's been looking at Gaza and looking at Iran, but Judea and Samaria is a cesspool.
Netanyahu's coalition partner, primarily Bezalel Smotrich, they want to dismantle the Palestinian Authority. They want to cancel the Oslo Accords and dismantle the Palestinian Authority. This is their agenda, and they are very consistent about it. And in order to do that, they are undermining any source of security and stability within the Palestinian Authority. And therefore, just think about where that places President Trump. President Trump just helped Netanyahu and Iran. President Trump wants Israel to normalize with Saudi. Saudi is speaking about the prospect of a two-state solution or some sort of Palestinian statehood. Meanwhile, not only that Netanyahu will not go with the idea of a Palestinian state, as he suggested, his own coalition partners are undermining the Palestinian Authority, which is the self-governing body of the Palestinians.
Well, they're corrupt. I mean, the way they're set up right now.
Of course, they're corrupt. But let me just tell you this. On the hierarchy of Israel's national security agenda, cleaning up the Arab systems from corruption is very low. And there are other corrupt countries that we're doing great business with.
No, but they don't have the trust of the people, the Palestinian Authority, because they're corrupt, they're inept. So that's why.
Basically, again, it was never Israel's issue whether government on the other side has legitimacy or not. Israel deals with monarchies. It deals with despots on the Arab side. We've dealt with all sorts of Arab leaders. But I do want to tell you about the Palestinian side. There is an agenda for upgrade and reform of the Palestinian Authority that was put forward by the UAE, which the government would not embrace. And the reason I'm saying this is not just because I'm critical of the government of this position, but also because it contradicts the positions of President Trump. And we know President Trump. When President Trump will decide that this is a priority for him, he will call Netanyahu in no unclear terms, in the same way that he told Netanyahu to turn the airplanes, 50 airplanes, all the way back from Iran. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine, for example, any other American president intervening like that in an operational decision of the IDF? Well, President Trump understood that Netanyahu doesn't want the ceasefire with Iran to continue, and that he ordered this strike of airplanes in order to dismantle the ceasefire with Iran, which is the agenda of the President Trump. And therefore, he pulled the reins, and he could do it again and again because Israel owes him big time.
They certainly owe big time. Our guest, Gidi Grinstein, he's his finger on the pulse what's happening in Israel. He was responsible for Birthright Israel. He's also the president of the Reut Group, and as well a group called TOM, Tikkun Olam Maker, is a global nonprofit that aids the disabled, elderly, and poor, a very important organization. We're going to be right back. Don't go away. Stay tuned. If you'd like to participate in the conversation, you can call us at 212-769-1925, 212-769-1925. Email's a wonderful way to get your questions answered, zev@talklinenetwork.com. You can also WhatsApp us at the 212-769-1925. Again, our number is 212-769-1925. Our email is zev@talklinenetwork.com. Coming up a little later in time, we'll hear from Professor Alan Dershowitz about the election in the primary of a socialist anti-Semite, Mamdani. We'll talk to him about that and what should American Jews do about that situation. All upcoming here on the Talkline Network. We're going to be right back.
We're expecting some questions. Yeah, בשידור. Zev, are we continuing?
Thank you for listening to this episode of Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast on the air since 1981. Please call us with your questions and comments at 212-769-1925. That's 212-769-1925. Or email us at zevbrenner@gmail.com.
And we're back. Our guest, Gidi Grinstein. He is the founder of Reut Group, formerly Reut Institute. He's also founded Tom Tikkun Olam Makers. They do a wonderful job of helping individuals around the world, the disabled, elderly, and the poor. He was involved in the peace process, one of the founders of Birthright Israel, and we're looking at the prospects for a new Middle East. Let's take some phone calls. Let's go to Rabbi Leiter in Rockland County. Your question or comment to Gidi. Go ahead, Rabbi.
Yes, good the call. Yes, I've been someone, under aegis of leveling critiques about various policies within the so-called ultra-Orthodox world and Israel and America. So I'm not, at all ignorant to the fact that there are a lot of things to critique, a lot of things that need improvement, and there are a lot of individuals in the community that are misleading the broader community in different ways and are subject to very legitimate critique. However, to paint the Haredi community as the most unproductive community in Israel is simply factually false. And I want to just by way of example, on the issue of the female draft, which is something I've been intensely involved in the past over the past 7 years, roughly, and I'm involved with helping girls avoiding falling into the army and being exposed to the sexual molestation and exploitation that unfortunately is endemic to militaries in general, and Israel is no exception in that regard. And we help most, in many cases, at least lately, we help mostly girls from
So your question is?
Okay. That on what basis do you say that the ultra-Orthodox is the most unproductive element of society when the gravest threats being perpetrated against Jews and the greatest dangers to which they're being subject are being perpetrated by the not non-religious, but the anti-religious elements. I'm talking about the army, the population shortage that they have, and I have relatives that serve in the Israeli army. The manpower shortage they have is strictly due to the fact that they've been aborting maybe 2 million babies, and that's not because of the
That doesn't have the. I'm going to let Gidi respond. You listen to your radio. Go ahead, bro. Go ahead, Gidi.
Well, I don't know what the rabbi is speaking about, 2 million babies and molestation in the military and stuff like that. I think this is really Lashon Hara at the highest possible scale, and you should be ashamed that you are speaking like that about the military. Really ashamed. It's disgusting. If there is a sexual harassment, people can sue, the police prosecute, the military punishes people for sexual harassment at a level that is even higher than the civilian courts. Just disgusting for you to disgrace like that the IDF. It's Rabbi.
Okay,
Rabbi,
because I was unable to hear.
Really do some soul searching before you trash the IDF like that.
Hello, Zev.
He's upset that you're thrashing the IDF.
Now,
yes.
when I speak about unproductiveness, I speak about economic activity. And economic activity has to do with education, with mathematics, with English, with sciences, with technical skills. And in this respect, there is no doubt that the Haredi population is not properly trained for the modern economy. There's no debate about that. At the same time, what I'm speaking about specifically in the military is the fact that the government is pushing permanent mass exemption, when at the same time, the same government is expecting other groups to step up and to serve more. And the only distinction that is being made between those who need to serve or those who are exempted from service is their faith. And I'm saying that this is not sustainable. In a country that is surrounded by enemies and need to have a very strong military capabilities, it is not sustainable to exempt one population permanently and at the same time demand from the other population to serve more. And I gave women as the example because only secular women are obligated to serve today. All other
That's a
women
lie.
segments of the
Absolute
population.
lie. For fact.
What you said is an absolute lie. I know that for a fact. There are hundreds and hundreds of girls, in fact, thousands of girls that are from traditional religious Orthodox backgrounds that are having all sorts of difficulties.
Don't say that I'm lying. They're all volunteering.
In military.
If you come from a religious background, you're volunteering. Okay, you are not obligated to serve. You're volunteering.
Who are the girls sitting in military prison? Are they transgender? All the girls sitting in military prison.
You don't know the facts, sir. Sir, you just don't know the facts, and you're confusing the audience here. Religious girls that are serving are volunteering. They are not obligated. If they don't want to serve, they declare that they're religious, and they're immediately exempted. Immediately. And the process of exemption...
I'm telling you, the fact is...
One at a time. Let you respond.
Rabbi, check your facts. The process of exemption takes 7 minutes in the Rabbanut of your city. You come in, you walk in, you say that you're a person of faith, and you're exempted on the spot. So don't tell me that I'm lying.
You're either lying or you're extremely ignorant and matched by your arrogance to speak about something about which...
Hold on. Isn't it the fact that it's voluntary? It's not mandatory for the religious girls that are serving.
No. Let me explain something. The law is that it's mandatory for every girl unless they get one of various exemptions, one of which is a religious exemption, which has become harder and harder to actually obtain for girls that are not connected. Girls that have protexia, that are part of, let's say, the Hasidus, it may be easier than ever in certain respects. But for girls, they can be very observant. But girls that are not connected, girls that are easy targets for any reason, are having a harder and harder time over the past 5, 8, 10 years getting a religious exemption. That's a fact that can be confirmed by anyone who has a smattering of a basic...
I'm going to let Gidi respond to you.
Okay. I don't think the rabbi knows what he's talking about. I live in Israel. My kids live in Israel. My family is Orthodox. You just don't know what you're talking about. I'm just so so upsetting to speak with ignorant people here. And
30 seconds, Rabbi. We have other calls.
May I respond? There is
30 seconds.
There's an organization called Chol Masai. There are multiple organizations. That's one of them. If you talk to the women volunteers that are standing by the Rabbanu office, they will tell you what they're dealing with every day. They're constantly getting calls from girls that are from religious backgrounds that are or have become religious and are having all sorts of problems with obtaining the religious exemption. Let me point out something else that you guess.
Okay, I'm going to let him respond, and we have other calls, so then I'm going to let him get a respond, and I thank you for your phone call. Go ahead, Gidi.
All right, I just Google search, are religious girls exempted from military service? Here's the answer. Yes, religious girls in Israel are exempted from military service for religious reasons. This exemption is given to women that declare religious lifestyle, including preserving kashrut, not driving on Shabbat, and keeping a religious family life. This is what you need to declare, sir. And I know it because it's in my family. And not only that, I saw it in my own eyes, okay? So really give us a break. There is a mandatory service in Israel only on women that are not religious. This is the only mandatory service on women. And the point that I'm making is that in the long term, these distinctions will not last. That's what I'm saying. Israel has security needs, security concerns. And when you're exempting one part of the population and you're obligating another part of the population, it's on the basis of faith. It simply cannot last in the long term. This is what I'm saying. And what you're saying is that some girls have a difficulty declaring that they're religious and therefore getting an exemption. Yes, maybe it's true, but maybe these girls are also lying, which is another possibility, because a lot of people use this religious exemption untruthfully. So
Do they investigate each particular person that claims to be religious?
yes, there are some investigations, but generally speaking, it's not too difficult to get.
We're going to get to some other. I just want to ask you this question. We interviewed Brigadier General Joseph Cooperwasser a number of weeks ago. And according to him, going back to October 7th, is that Israel knew of the plans of Hamas. They had the blueprint. There was even an exercise in September prior to October 7th. The Israeli intelligence failed to look at it even after October 7th. They failed to acknowledge that they were planning for it. So this seems to be a colossal failure on Israeli intelligence, that it wasn't a surprise. They knew they had the exact blueprint. In fact, it was even on Gazan television where they showed what they were going to do. So they were pretty open about it.
So first of all, Brigadier General Yossi Cooperwasser is really an expert on this phenomena. It's a phenomena in military intelligence, in military life, in history, which is called a fundamental surprise. Okay, a fundamental surprise is a surprise that occurs not because you don't have information. It occurs because you have the wrong mindset. You're not analyzing the information properly. Historically, for example, you know, the German bypassed on the French twice. They came from Belgium. They didn't come from the German-French border. They came from Belgium twice, in the First World War and then in the Second World War. So you could say that in the First World War, the French were surprised. But what about the Second World War? How come the French were surprised again? It's all about the mindset. In 1973, we knew that the Egyptians were planning for war. Every soldier on the front line in 1973 could see that the Egyptians were planning for war. But there was a mindset. So the mindset in 1973 was that the Egyptians don't have air superiority. They need air superiority to win the war. And as long as they don't have the air superiority, they're not going to launch a military strike. So that was the mindset in 1973. So all and any evidence and reports to the contrary were discredited. Same thing here about Hamas, okay? Israel had a mindset. The mindset was, number one, the barrier that we built along the Gaza border with an investment of $1 billion is impenetrable. Second is that we have intelligence information and we will know if they strike, okay? Third is that Hamas was invested in the opening of the border, in the movement of the labor, in the money that was coming in from Qatar, etc. So there were all these reasons why Hamas would not go to war. So everything that was happening in Gaza was framed as some sort of a, you know, show of force and to mobilize, to kind of propaganda with the local population. Nobody really thought that Hamas was going to war. By the way, Prime Minister Netanyahu himself, I believe in 2016, presented the Hamas plan that was eventually implemented in 2023. He presented it in the Knesset himself, the Prime Minister Netanyahu.
The exact plan that Hamas did?
The exact plan, coming across the fence, taking over communities along the border, doing so along multiple areas, abducting people to go into Gaza, etc., etc. So yes, we had all the information, but we couldn't see the war coming. This is a massive intelligence failure, but it's not a failure of information collection. The information collection was good. It was a failure of analysis, okay? So, for example, vice versa, think about Iran, okay? Iran had all the information that Israel is coming. Israel, you know, brought down the air defenses. Israel destroyed the surface-to-air missiles. Israel declared that if Iran races to a bomb, Israel will strike. There were all these indications, and nonetheless, the Iranians were surprised. Okay, they had all the information, they couldn't see it coming. So we see this phenomena in history. It's a known phenomena. I would say, and this is kind of ironic and even sad, former Israeli intelligence officers became the world experts in analyzing these strategic surprises. And Cooperwasser, as is known, okay, he's one of the big students of this approach.
But they didn't listen to him.
It's not about him. It's not that they didn't listen to him. First of all, who's they? And
the Israeli intelligence establishment.
So he says that he warned that there could be an attack. Maybe I haven't heard him. Other people warned as well. The issue was, when is the attack happening? Okay, and what we know about Hamas is that Israel was able to anticipate Hamas actions and understand Hamas actions successfully until May 2021. In May 2021, Hamas is beginning to prepare for war. And Israel is not analyzing properly the change in the Hamas strategy beginning in May 2021. So over a 2-year period, Hamas is planning for war. And in April 2023, Hamas is ready to strike, and they decide not to do it. So, and they wait until October, another 6 months. And even in those 6 months, nobody actually understood what was happening. Now, part of why it happened is that Hamas saturated the Israeli system, okay? Instead of trying to conceal their intentions, they actually spoke about it all the time. They, as you said, they made a TV series about it. They launched demonstrations, and in these demonstrations, they came back and forth to the barrier, back and forth to the fence, over and over again. They sent drones into Israel that dropped little bombs over open areas. So the Israelis are saying, oh, look at these Hamasniks, they're just throwing bombs on open areas. But Hamas was actually rehearsing the ability to drop a bomb where they wanted. Today, they wanted to drop a bomb in an open field. Tomorrow, on October 7th, they dropped a bomb on the Israeli intelligence systems, on the Israeli intelligence systems. Okay, so what you saw is that Hamas, the Hamas leadership, and by the way, only a handful of people were in the know about this program. It is assumed that only 5 people in Hamas actually knew what the plan is. So,
They knew the plan. Everybody knew the plan. They didn't know when it was going to be implemented.
No, everybody knew. Those 5 people knew that there was a strategic decision in May 2021 to launch a major game-changing strike against Israel. That the negotiations that were going on with Prime Minister Netanyahu behind the scenes turned out to be futile. These negotiations brought Hamas certain achievements up to a certain point, like opening of the border, calming down, Qatari money, etc. But then the next step, Netanyahu wasn't willing to do, which is the exchange of prisoners. So Netanyahu couldn't do it politically, didn't want to do it for whatever reason. And then at the same time, we're seeing escalation in Jerusalem. Remember that May 2021, there are around the Jerusalem Day parade, there are riots by Jews against Arabs in the old city of Jerusalem that escalate, and then the police moves on Temple Mount, the Israeli police, and photos are coming out of Israeli policemen with their boots on the prayer rugs of Muslims on Temple Mount. At that point, in retrospect, we know, Hamas decided, and then Hamas sort of goes for a short conflict with Israel, and they fire in the direction of Jerusalem. Go back to May 2021, you'll see everything that I'm telling you about. And then Israel kind of responds, and Hamas stops, and in the minds of Israelis, Hamas is deterred. But actually what happened is that the leaders of Hamas said, we're not going to go into another round with Israel of back and forth, etc., because every round like that, Israel kind of decimates us and kills our commanders, etc. We're going to wait and build power in order to launch a game-changing strike. And that's what's going on from May 2021 until April 2023. For about a 2-year period, they're building their force. Meanwhile, they're restraining themselves, okay? They don't join other groups. So for example, at some point, there is a clash between Israel and Islamic Jihad. Hamas stays out. What is the mindset in Israel? Hamas is deterred. Okay, what is actually happening? Hamas is just building its force. So the mindset in Israel was Hamas is contained and deterred. If you go back, you'll see these words repeated dozens of times by military leaders and political leaders. Contained and deterred, contained and deterred, contained and deterred. So everything that is happening in Gaza is being interpreted through the framework of contained and deterred. Meanwhile, Hamas is not contained and deterred. Hamas is strategically being patient and force building until they're ready to strike, which happens in 2023. And also, internally, They were sadly very smart about it. One of the things they understood, much better than the Iranians, is that they were totally penetrated intelligence-wise. Okay, that Israel has eyes and ears all over Gaza. So 5 people or a very small group decides to launch this strike, but they know they can't tell anybody. So they're not even telling the Iranians. They're not even telling Hezbollah. They're hinting to Hezbollah, and they're hinting to the Iranians that they're going to do it. But they're not saying it explicitly because they're afraid that Israel will learn about the intentions by eavesdropping to the Iranians and to Hezbollah, because Hamas understood that Israel has penetrated Hezbollah and Hamas totally. Of course, they couldn't have known about the pagers. They couldn't have known about many other things. But they have this suspicion. So they're not able to coordinate outside of Gaza what's going on. And if you look at what happened in April 2023, May 2023, and then again in August 2023, they're basically sort of saying to their allies, look, something big is going to happen. Be ready. We're going to do something. You should consider joining, etc. But contained and deterred. That was the mindset. Any information to the contrary was rejected, was just bouncing off this mindset that Hamas is not going to war.
But didn't Iran help train Hamas for this mission? For this October 7th?
Yes. There was collaboration between Iran and Hamas, but Hamas is not an Iranian proxy. Okay, Hamas is not Islamic Jihad. Hamas has its own agenda. Iran has an agenda, and they had an alignment of interests. Now, for example, and because Hamas is not an Iranian proxy, there were extended periods of time where there was tension between Hamas and Iran. And there was even some sort of a disconnect for a while, because Hamas has a different agenda. Also, Hamas is Sunni, Iran is Shiite. Hamas wanted to, there was a big faction within Hamas that wanted to govern Gaza. They wanted to replace the Fatah as the leading political movement of the Palestinian national movement. Iran wanted Hamas to be dedicated to the jihad against Israel. So there were a lot of areas where they weren't fully coordinated. But of course, there was coordination and there was help, and there was, there was Hamas people who were trained in Iran. Yes, of course. But it wasn't that Hamas was working for Iran. By the way, if that was the case, we could have known about this because we have penetrated Iran in such a way.
Right, but the irony is, had Hezbollah and Iran and Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th, it would have been much more devastating.
Oh my God! I was in the border with Lebanon. Obviously, it's very hard to explain to your listeners what it looks like. We're talking about standing on the border of Lebanon, looking at a path that we now know would have been a penetration path of Hezbollah. Now, Hezbollah is right on top of the border. I mean, it's hard to imagine. It's like 2 blocks, New York City scale, okay? They're right on top of the border. If they are a 2-minute drive to the border. They could penetrate the border. 10 minutes later, they're in Akko. 15 minutes later, they're in Akko. 10 minutes later, from that specific area, they're in Nahariya. 20 minutes, they're in Haifa. Can you imagine? Can you imagine what could have happened? And I'm not even talking about all the border communities in the north.
It's a miracle from God that they
just a miracle. I mean, I can't. I mean, it's just could have been so much worse.
Our guest just for a little while longer, Gidi Grinstein. He is the founder of Rayut, also Tom Tikkun Oil Makers. He has his finger on the pulse of what's happening in Israel. We're looking at what happens next. We're going to be right back. We're continuing taking some of your phone calls. 212-769-1925. Kensington, if you could call us back again, we lost a couple of the callers. 212-769-1925. Email zev@talklinenetwork.com. Coming up a little while, Alan Dershowitz on Modami on his Democratic victory in New York City, what it all means for the Jews. What should the Jews do?
Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast on the air since 1981.
And now, here's your host.
We're back. Our final session with Gidi Grinstein. Blazing board. A lot of people calling. We'll try to get to as many of your calls as possible. Let me just read one email before we get to our phone calls. And Sylvia writes, I never admit this publicly, but because of my religious background, but anybody who says that it's the men learning Torah who are saving Israel rather than the soldiers should be ashamed of themselves. Men can learn many hours daily while in the army. Okay, appreciate your comment. I believe is this Avram in Kensington?
Speaking.
Go ahead, Avram. I know you've been patiently waiting, so your question for Gidi.
Shavua Tov, this month, in order to forestall looting of food deliveries by Hamas, Israel has issued small arms to some of the clans in Gaza. Based upon our experience with the Palestinian Authority over many decades, is that a good idea?
I think that what you're seeing in Gaza is really the outcome of very, very flawed strategic thinking on part of the government. And here is the paradox here. So Israel has agreements with the Palestinian Authority. There is also security collaboration to a degree with the Palestinian Authority. And I know there are a lot of reservations with the corruption of the Palestinian Authority, with the fact that it's helping people in prison, etc. But at the end of the day, the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank is an entity that Israel collaborates with and coordinates with, etc. Now, because there is the right-wing factions of the government, Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, who want to cancel the Oslo Accords and dismantle the Palestinian Authority, the government of Israel will not allow the Palestinian Authority to go into Gaza, will not allow the training of the security forces of the Palestinian Authority, will not give them guns. Okay, so how are they supposed to collaborate with Israel if they don't have the guns that they need, etc. All these things we wouldn't do with the Palestinian Authority.
But they gave Israel guns, and they gave the Palestinian guns in years past, and some of them were used against Israel. They gave them weapons during the Oslo process.
Of course, that was a big issue. I would say in the Second Palestinian Uprising from September 2000 until 2003, but then there was a major cleanup under Prime Minister Salam Fayyad and also Chairman Abu Mazen, and it has not been an issue for the last 20 years. But you're right, it was a big issue. The point is that someone has to offer security in Gaza. Someone has to collaborate with the Israeli-backed Gaza Humanitarian Fund, which is basically a front for Israeli activity. So you don't want to do it with the Palestinian Authority. So guess what? You end up giving weapons to this clan that has Islamist background and connections in Sinai. You end up, you don't want the Palestinian Authority that we can collaborate with. You don't want them to distribute food. So you end up distributing the food and you're paying for it. And on top of that, the whole world is condemning you. So I think that the contrast between the way in which Prime Minister Netanyahu managed the war in Lebanon against Hezbollah and in Iran and with the Houthis, which is professionally managed, all the audience here should acknowledge, military leadership is a profession. It is based on technical skills, on knowledge, on knowing history. These military commanders, they study countless battles, countless wars in order to understand best practices and elicit the principles that will eventually lead you to success in a super chaotic and complex environment. So when Israel does this professionally, look at the successes in Lebanon, in Iran, and other places. But in Gaza, it's ideological war. And because it's an ideological war, there is nothing, no achievement that the military can bring that will satisfy the far-right factions of the government. And that's why it's a quagmire. We cannot win in Gaza. And that's why we end up doing stupid things in Gaza. Instead of bringing in a security force of the Palestinian Authority that we know, that we can control, that are trained in Jordan by the Americans, what do? We give arms to a clan that has, as I said, Islamic tendencies, and they have no legitimacy whatsoever to control Gaza. So sadly, it's not a smart move. I am very pessimistic about that enterprise, of the Gaza Humanitarian Fund succeeding. It's already kind of a rolling disaster. And
then can you let Hamas take all the food, the humanitarian aid? Because the way the United Nations and all the other relief groups, Hamas was stealing them blind.
No, of course, we need someone else to take control of Gaza, but that someone else is the Palestinian
right now,
Authority.
humanitarian aid, Israel took it over because Hamas was stealing it. When the United Nations and all these other groups were distributing the food, it was being stolen.
Yes, but because we did not introduce an alternative self-governing Palestinian, okay? When we controlled northern Gaza, and then we withdrew. Instead of inviting the Palestinian Authority to take northern Gaza over and apply northern Gaza the same mechanisms of security collaboration.
But they can't take it over until they're reformed, because the way they are right now, they're not in a position to govern.
We're not even allowing them to reform.
I think the President Trump, according to what the Jerusalem Post reported, part of the plan for Gaza was to have the Palestinian Authority come in.
Well, that's why I'm so hopeful. I totally agree with the instincts of President Trump. And I think President Trump is honestly the only person that could unmask the nonsense that we're seeing from the Israeli government when it comes to Gaza. Call a spade, saying to the Israeli government, what do you guys want? Do you want to control Gaza? Take it over, clean it up, feed the people, take care of the people. President Trump could say, go ahead and do it. If you don't want to do it, someone else needs to do it. There's only one other entity that could do that, and that's some sort of a Palestinian self-governing body that is sanctioned by the Palestinian Authority and supported by international force. The UAE, okay? UAE has been mentioned all the time. The UAE has been 100% consistent from day one about what they want. They said, we are not coming into Gaza unless invited by the Palestinians. Who's the Palestinians inviting the UAE? It's the PLO or the PA. These are the only two entities that can invite the UAE. Second, they said, we're only coming in for a short period. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years maximum. After that, the Palestinians need to take over. Number three, when we come in, Israel cannot move in and out of our area, because the worst thing that could happen is that an Israeli soldier kills an Emirati soldier in Gaza. Okay? Number four, they said, we need backing of Egypt, of the US, and potentially also of Qatar. Okay? So all of these things, these are the conditions of the UAE. I think that there is a way to get Hamas out of Gaza. But
how? They don't want to leave?
They have indicated willingness to leave. Okay? But the only way to bring Hamas, to take Hamas out of Gaza, is for Israel to commit that it will withdraw from Gaza and that Gaza will be Palestinian, meaning it will be controlled by a Palestinian governing body. And Zev, it's I think the fourth or the fifth time I'm on your show since the beginning of the war, maybe more. And I've said from day one, and you can hear you can see even the debate back to back that I had with Ambassador David Friedman. Only the Palestinian Authority and the PLO are the legitimate entities of the Palestinian side, and only they can actually sanction this kind of technocratic government that could control Gaza. This is the only way to go forward, and eventually Washington will understand it, and then in short order, I believe that Israel will understand it as well, because the position of the Israeli government today is not sustainable.
Avram Kempman, thank you for your phone call.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Let's see. Do we have Jeff in Flatbush?
Yes, we did. I'd like to say two things. First of all, you talked about avoidance of service in the Israeli army. It's very easy to avoid service in the Israeli army. You just go to the office there and tell them you're a supporter of Rabbi Meir Kahane or Baruch Goldstein. They won't let you get near the army. So that's the easiest thing to do. So a second thing I'd like to talk about, I think it was a Chilul Hashem that Israel allowed the Americans to bomb the reactor. Israel should have gone in there in the beginning with a Ranger-trained unit. This is a standard tactic for a Ranger-trained unit to go in there on the ground and get it done with that way. It's a simple I mean, everything is it's a war thing, it's a battle thing, but it's strategically very, very simple. Given the terrain, there's no civilians around. It's mostly military guarded there, and they have no aerial support. They're very unsophisticated, and they should have done that, and would have been a lot better. And Israel would have looked a lot stronger if they would have done it on their own.
I'll let Gidi respond.
I forgot. Israel. Oh, excuse me. I forgot. Israel stopped training Ranger tactics 15 years ago.
I'll let Gidi respond. If any thoughts, Gidi?
Then how can I respond to that?
Okay. Yeah, I don't know anything about it. Anyway, thank you for your phone call. Let's go to Stan in Forest Hills. Go ahead. Your question.
Let me ask you a question. It's a little bit what this guy said before, but I don't think he knows what he's talking about. Here's the point. The United States bombed these facilities. In your gut position, in your thinking, what you know, and what people have told you, they have not surrendered. They have no intention of surrendering. Did they get anything? They moved the centrifuges. They moved the material. In your opinion, did it make a difference that they bombed this thing?
I have no better opinion than what the chief of staff of the IDF has said, and that is that the Iranian nuclear project suffered a systemic setback. I repeat, systemic, meaning multiple elements of the project were either destroyed or compromised, but it will take probably a few months to fully assess what was the extent of the damage. I don't know.
Do you think they'll surrender? Do you think they didn't surrender? They're not going to surrender.
Okay.
I'm very skeptical. I'm very skeptical that Iran will surrender to Israel. Just to remember that Iran did not surrender to Iraq. It was attacked. Iraq actually seized significant territories of Iran. They bombed Tehran. There were missiles flying on Tehran, airplane sorties bombing Tehran. They didn't surrender. I think they were willing. They lost 1 or 2 million soldiers, these ridiculous numbers, and eventually they won the war. The Iranians have staying power. This is an old civilization. It's a proud country, and you don't want to get into a war of attrition with Iran. Everybody says.
So what's the way to defeat them? Bottom line, go to war all out. What is the way? These have to be defeated. What's the only way? Let me hear it.
I really hope that there will be an agreement now brokered
by
the United States.
Agreement.
Well,
an agreement.
Let him finish. Go ahead, Gidi.
Go ahead. Sure.
Listen, there are just two ways to do it, either militarily or diplomatically. Militarily, Israel has really, succeeded in the first strike, but Iran could have sustained the firing of missiles into Israel for a long time. Remember that Iran has long borders. Yes, we're destroying missile launchers, but they could bring them in from Russia. They could bring them in from North Korea. They do
bring North Korea as a big. That's a big beef of mine. North Korea is under the radar screen.
Yeah,
they're the ones that built those missiles.
They have. This is not Lebanon that we control all the entries of Lebanon. Iran has seaports in the Indian Ocean. Okay, outside of the Persian Gulf. Iran has land borders with, I think, 7 or 8 countries. Okay, maybe more, including Afghanistan, including Pakistan, including in Central Asia. Iran could, if Iran wanted to sustain the war in Israel, they could do it for a long time. I just want to give you a tiny little statistics. My son lives in Tel Aviv, very close to the center of Tel Aviv. There were missile hits from Iran 300 yards to the east and 300 yards to the west of his apartment. Okay, number one. Number two, I have a team of 20 people in Israel. 2 of them lost their home. 2 out of 20. Now, you could say it's a lot. It's statistically not representative. Maybe. But I'm telling you, 2 people lost their home from my team in Israel. So sustaining a war against Iran, we have to know when to turn military achievements to political achievements. And yes, I know it may sound naive, but any successful war ends in a diplomatic process that consolidates the military achievements and turns them into political achievements. This is what you do in war. The war is a continuation of diplomacy and politics in other means. This is the definition of Clausewitz, which is agreed upon by all experts all over the world.
Anyway, thank you for your phone call. Gidi Green's running out of time. We appreciate you being here with us. You're having a conference coming up in New York, correct?
July 21, about the future of American Jewry. I believe that American Jewry is the greatest diaspora in history. It's the greatest diaspora of our time. We need to think long and hard and creatively about how to keep America great. We're in a situation of Bavel and Yerushalayim, again, two leading Jewish communities that are competing and collaborating. I'm very, very hopeful about the future of American Jewry, in spite of all the recent setbacks, the anti-Semitism, Mandani, New York. Yes, but there's never been a country, I'm very proud to say that, the week of July 4. There's never been a country more welcoming to Jews in history than the United States of America. July 4th coming up, yes, we all celebrate, but this is also should be a moment of tremendous gratitude to what this country has allowed the Jews to build and to be, especially when we remember what happened to European Jews and the destruction that came upon us in Europe before and then during the Second World War, and before that in the Pale of Settlement under the Russian, and so on. American Jewry in America is a miracle, and this is an appropriate week. Actually, we should have spoken about that, Zev, tonight.
So just tell us where people can sign up, or just tell us who's going to be speaking.
Actually, it's not open for the public to sign up, but there will be a link for people to listen to, because we're very limited in terms of the space. But it is trying to explore, what does it mean to be the great diaspora of our time? What does it mean policy-wise? What does it mean in terms of how we educate our children, how we nurture leadership? What is the big story that we're telling American society? What should be our contribution to America? Okay, these are the questions that we want to be asking during this day. What is the national security of American Jewry? How should we think about the long-term security of American Jewry? Also, there's tremendous technological advancements and a lot of innovation that creates tremendous ethical issues. I just want to throw one thing, perhaps with that we'll close. Within the next decade, people will be living on the moon. Within the next generation, people will be living on Mars. Just imagine Jewish life on the moon, Jewish life on the Mars. All the halachic questions that come from that, right? This is happening, and it's happening, God willing, in our lifetime, in the lifetime, your lifetime, my lifetime, the lifetime of the listeners. And I think the Jews can be at the forefront of discussing these moral issues. Of course, there's AI, machine learning, treatment in biology, in medicine, stem cell treatment, 3D printing of organs, many.
What you've been doing with Tom, we didn't discuss, but you're saving a lot of lives with your organization.
So thank you for the credit. I don't think we're saving, but we are helping a lot of people, people with disabilities or elderly people that cannot get the solution and the product that they need at the price that can afford where they are. This is what we're solving. This is our big mission. But I have to say that since October 7, we've been focused on wounded soldiers in Israel. And there are a lot of needs in Israel, obviously. During the war with Lebanon, we fitted hundreds of apartments in northern Israel for people with disabilities who don't have a safe space and don't have a shelter. But this was, easy compared to what happens now with the war in Iran. Because in the war in Iran, first of all, there was longer notice, but also the missiles were much stronger. So a lot of people with disabilities who did not go to the shelter under the attacks of Hezbollah now wanted to go to the shelters, and a lot of the shelters were not accessible for wheelchairs and for elderly people, that have walkers, etc. So, that was the main focus of ours in the last year and a half.
Doing amazing work with Tom. Thank you, Gidi Grinstein,
Thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit about that.
I enjoy the give and take. We don't always agree exactly, but I think it's important we have that dialogue. What's missing from Jewish life is we can't always talk and express.
That's why I love being on your show, Zev.
And we love having you too. And thank you for joining. Thank you, Gidi Grinstein, here on the Talkline Network, doing a great job with Tom and Bayut Institute, and we enjoyed